You've built your shelter, you've found water. Night is closing in fast, and now you need heat. But your matches are limited, your firewood is damp, and well, there's no fuel source in sight. Now imagine facing that same situation behind enemy lines during World War II, where fire wasn't just about survival, but also about staying hidden. Wartime scouts and reconnaissance units didn't have the luxury of carrying fuel canisters. They had to improvise, turning everyday materials into reliable, efficient cooking fuels. Today, we're breaking down those improvised fuel methods, simple, practical, and still incredibly effective in modern survival situations. Because, you know, when you can create fire from almost anything, you're never truly stranded. 1. The principle of improvised fuel. Before we dive into materials, understand this. Good fuel must do 3 things: ignite easily, burn steadily, and produce enough heat to cook or boil water. Wartime units like the British Commandos trained to identify materials that met these conditions, even in harsh environments. The key isn't finding perfect fuel, it's making imperfect fuel work. Fat-based fuels, right? They were actually one of the most effective improvised fuels used during World War II, and they came from a rather unexpected source. Fat. Animal fat, cooking grease, or even just leftover bits from rations can burn surprisingly well. Here's how you'd use it. Soak some cloth paper or even dry plant fibres in the fat. Place it in a small container or wrap it up tightly. Then light it carefully. Fat burns hot and slow, making it excellent for cooking, honestly. Wartime soldiers would often reuse leftover ration grease as a secondary fuel source, especially when wood was hard to come by. Wax and oil fuels are another clever option. If you've got access to wax, like old candles or oils, whether it's cooking oil or, in really desperate times, even engine oil, you can make a reliable fuel source. Here's how you can improvise a wick stove. Fill a container with oil or melted wax. Then insert a strip of cloth or string to act as a wick. Light the exposed tip, and you've got yourself a small controlled flame. Perfect for boiling water or heating food. It's quiet, produces very little smoke, and is honestly quite easy to maintain. Resin and sap. Nature's fuel, if you like. In forest environments, tree resin is easily one of the best natural fuels you can find. Pine trees especially produce a sticky sap that burns hot and bright. Here's what you do. Collect hardened resin from the bark, break it into small pieces, and add it to your fire as an accelerant. Resin ignites quickly, so it can help light even damp wood. Scouts operating in wooded areas would often rely on resin-rich fatwood to get fires going, even when everything else was wet. Dry plant materials and fibres. Now, even in the harshest environments, nature provides fuel. You just need to recognize it, really. Some common improvised fuels include dry grass, bark shavings, pine needles, dead leaves, and, in tropical areas, coconut husk. These materials, well, they burn quickly, so they're best used as starter fuel, not for long-term burning. During wartime training, we always emphasized building fires in stages. Start with fine material for ignition, then add small sticks for growth, and finally larger fuel for sustainability. This layered approach, you see, ensures efficiency. Charcoal. Now, that's the hidden resource. It's honestly one of the most efficient fuels you can use. Charcoal burns hotter and cleaner than raw wood, and it produces less smoke, which is absolutely critical for concealment during wartime. To improvise charcoal, you burn wood in a low-oxygen environment like a covered pit or a container and allow it to smoulder rather than burn completely. The result is a lightweight, high-energy fuel. Units like the Long-Range Desert Group, for example, really valued low-smoke fuels in open environments where visibility was a constant risk. Paper, cloth, and waste materials. These might not sound like much, but in emergency situations, even trash becomes fuel. For example, you can use paper tightly rolled or twisted, strips of cloth, especially when they're soaked in oil or fat, or even just plain old cardboard. Now, these materials do burn quickly, but when you combine them with other fuels, they can be extremely useful. In wartime conditions, nothing was wasted. Every material had potential. Alcohol-based fuels are another option. If you've got access to alcohol, whether it's from medical supplies or spirits, it can actually make a clean-burning fuel. The trick is simple. Pour a small amount into a metal container, light it carefully, and then place your cookware above it. Just remember, alcohol burns with a nearly invisible flame, so it's quite handy for stealth cooking. But it does burn fast, so you'll want to use it efficiently. One of the biggest lessons from World War II is this: fuel is precious. Wartime scouts, they followed strict fuel discipline. Use the smallest fire possible, cook quickly, extinguish immediately after use, and save any remaining fuel. A small, controlled flame is often more effective than a roaring fire. In survival, efficiency really does equal survival. The best survival fires don't rely on just one material. They combine multiple fuels for maximum effect. For instance, you might use dry grass to get things going, add a bit of resin for a heat boost, and then keep it all going with small sticks or charcoal. This sort of layered system gives you a stable, efficient fire, even when the conditions are tough. Now, here's the thing. Improvised cooking fuels aren't about convenience, they're about adaptability. The soldiers and scouts who operated in extreme conditions during World War II didn't sit around waiting for perfect conditions. They used what they had. Fat became fuel, sap became a fire starter, scraps became survival tools, and honestly, those same principles still apply today. Because when you understand how to turn ordinary materials into heat, you gain control over one of the most critical elements of survival. Fire isn't just something you find, it's something you create.